applications, you're probably talking more like a month. So you're going from July now to August 1st or later to get the approval back. So then you get a contract from the DOE that says, okay, we've approved your application, now we're gonna get you to sign a contract that says, okay, we are gonna do this project, and your board chairman's gonna have to sign that too, okay? It goes to the state Board of Education for their approval. So they approve that yeah, the monies will be available, we don't have an excess of applications, blah, 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 and so they approve it. And then it goes to the legislature. So now we're looking at, the legislature meets from what, January, sometime in January, and they drag it out for their 40 days till sometime in March. And so then, and the budget is usually the last thing is approved. And so that application is part of the budget, so it's approved in probably March. So now we're July 1 all the way to March before we even have approval. So once it's approved, then it has to go to the, I think it's GSFIC, for them to actually develop a bond sale for it. The bonds are not going to be sold until probably June of the next year. So now we're a year behind, okay? And so by the time the bond sales and the actual proceeds, revenue from the bond sales starts coming in and gets converted into a bank and an account, it's going to be September, October before you can have any access to that money. So you're a year behind once you make the application. But you've got to have a year before that, have your plans taking shape before that $300 million actually becomes a check in your system.
And there have been some years where, you know, the governor's got the authority to slow that bond sale down 60 to 90 days.
Yes. There's been years that the bond's been sold to August.
Yeah.
So that makes a big difference. One year, Gwinnett County, as usual, was driving everything. And so they decided that they had a big application in the process. They decided that they were not going to do any of the project. So they took theirs completely out of the picture. And it left all the other school systems with theirs. And the state said, we're not selling bonds this year. Franklin County was involved in it. They had just started their new high school. They had already started to get pay requests in from their contractor. And so they submitted to the state to get their money, and the state says, we don't have any money. And so about 12 months later, they got their first check from the state. They were very lucky that their contractors, and they had some local money, and their contractors kind of carried them for a while. But they were in a world of hurt. But it all worked out in the end, and a lot of that was tied to that stimulus package that we kind of forced on us. So the next statement, it says reimbursement, and it's very, very important that you understand it's a reimbursement program. So if it's reimbursement, what does that mean to you as a school system? You have to pay for it first. You know, you pay for it up front, and then you ask for your money back from them. So when you do a project, you must have all of the total cost of that project in your budget. So if it's going to be $1 million project, you got to be able to show, yeah, we got $1 million in our budget that we could set aside for this if we had to, so that in case the bonds didn't sell and we had to wait a year. So because the contractor's not going to wait, so you got to have that money up front, and then you make the payment, and then you ask for reimbursement. Now, most systems will say, well, we really don't have all the money necessary, but we have enough to make that first few payments. And so then we'll get through that period, and then we'll start getting reimbursements, and then we're going to be okay. So, but it usually works out good for them. So that's basically what facility planning is, the nuts and bolts of how it works from the state side of it. You make your facility plan, you establish needs, you determine your entitlement, state determines your entitlement, and then you make application to get those monies, and following all the guidelines and so on like that. And again, it goes back to what you want, adequate for your school system. okay? I put this slide in here just for fun, really. It says, for any project the school system plans and makes application for state funds, they must be sure that they have the total project cost in their budget. Many things can happen to delay or prevent reimbursement of funds. In addition, the Georgia DOE does not participate in anything at 100% level. Each school system is required a local percentage rate, which usually is about 20%. The total cost of any project will exceed the allotment for the project by the Georgia DOE. As a result, the DOE application amount will usually be the 40% to 50% of the actual cost of the project. So, as we said, that $900,000 you're getting the state to do the HVAC is going to cost you 1.7. But your system with your SPLOST has made sure that you can pay for that as you go. Folks, SPLOST is the best thing going. I don't mind telling you. And I'm prejudiced because without SPLOST, your system couldn't do half the stuff you do. You couldn't have the PLC. You couldn't have the new middle school. You'd probably still be going to high school in that old high school building up here in the 1970s. I played basketball then. So SPLOST is totally important. And how you promote it, how you write it is even more important. One of the things that I like to do as much as anybody around is I like to drive the mountains. And I like to come to the mountains, and I fish. And I'm gonna try to get them to hook me up over at them too, that guy that owns that private property. But I love to come up here. And when I come, 9 times out of 10, I spend money. And you know, I don't spend a lot of money, but 1% of that money, that tax money is going to you guys. And that's the thing that's happening every weekend as these people come through here in the spring and fall. Summertime is probably not as much, but there's a lake right up the road up here that a lot of people like to fish in. So that they're paying 1% of that sales tax going to you guys that they're spending. And you couldn't do it without it. And you guys is making sure that you guys don't have any bond indebtedness by using that SPLOST that's as effective as any school system in this state. So as you prepare for your SPLOST, kind of keep that in mind. We said it's a reimbursement program. You make the payment to the contractor, and then you send in the pay request to DOE. Reimbursement approved check comes in about 2 to 3 weeks, and the whole 10% to the very end if you've got state funds in it. So they want to make sure it's completed according to their guidelines, and so there's asbestos reports and so on like that. We won't spend a whole lot of time on that because you know how a reimbursement works. Planning, and this is as much as important thing as I'm going to say today. When you plan, use your local facility plan. It has to, anything that you do in planning, whether it's recognized as a need by the state or whether it's just something you need, it should be in your facility plan. Prioritize your needs is important based on what your entitlement is and what your budget is. Use your local budget and entitlement. I'm going to go into that a little bit more as we go. Use your local facility plan and use your consultant. You have a DOE consultant. His name is Doug also. He's a good one. And he will come to you as he needs to, and I am even more valuable than he is. Use us to determine the best ways to maximize your entitlement. We want to make sure, my job for your school system through Pioneer RESA is to make sure that your facility plan has everything that it could possibly have in it to ensure that you're getting the most of that $300 million that you can get. And so you're going to maximize your entitlement. Prioritize your project by using your scheduled funds, your available funds, your SPLOST and your entitlement. The best way to do it is to sit your entitlement sheet down. And you have that entitlement sheet, it's got this year's entitlement and last year's accumulated entitlement. It's not hard to figure it out that your needs and your plan is not going to change extensively unless you do something really, really big. I won't say drastic, but if you do something, I guess, out of the ordinary, that entitlement's really probably not going to change very much. That $3 million of needs that are state recognized. So your entitlement is not gonna change a lot over the years. So you take that first number that you're being, that's on there for line one, the $300 million, and you project that out at least 5 years in advance. So that you'll know how much entitlement you're gonna get in the next 5 years. In the years that you're going to use prior to doing a project. For example, if you decide to renovate a building, and you set that goal that we want to do this project in 2020, then you take those numbers and project what your entitlement is going to be out to 2020, so that you'll know how much money that you're going to be able to get from the state. Okay, and then take your SPLOST revenue and the percentage that you set aside for capital improvements, and you put that out there too. And through that 5-year or 4-year process until you do the project. And then you determine, is my funds gonna be available? Now, the good thing about is you guys got to work with BOE Watson most of the time. BOE Watson will do it for you. They'll set it down and they'll do a spreadsheet that says, this is your SPLOST income, this is your entitlement fund, and this is what it's gonna accumulate over a certain period of time until we get ready to do this project, and this is how much money you're gonna have to do this particular project, unless there's some sort of, something comes up we don't know about, a building completely fails or something. And usually insurance will cover a lot of that. But that's the most important way of doing planning. Set your budget. And then once your budget is, even before your budget is established, you determine what's adequate for your school system. Now, I keep saying that word adequate because that adequate is not the same for you as it is for me. And, I live in about a $250,000 house now, and in Forsyth County, that's not very big. You may want to live in a $500,000 house or $1 million house. But my house is very adequate for what I have, what I need. What you have, it may not be adequate. You may have 6 kids, and then my little 3-bedroom house wouldn't be enough for 6 kids. So adequate is such an important word, such an important concept for you to take into fact. You determine what that is. Do you want your kids going to a school that doesn't have the same advantages that Towns, Fannin, Forsyth, Lumpkin has? You want them to be competitive because they're going to have to compete with those folks when they get out of school. And as a matter of fact, one of the ladies I talked to earlier, she says her daughter is graduating from college in a couple of years in North Georgia. She's going into teacher education. She's already said she wants to work in Forsyth County. What the cost that's going to incur to her in Forsyth County to live there is not going to be the same as it is in here. But what's adequate? What's important for her to have at that particular time? So take those things, set them side by side, determine what's adequate, determine what projects that you have in mind, apply your budget to it, and then once you get it out there, just like we said when we were doing your house, start to think about, if your budget doesn't match, what can we do? Can we do some engineering to change that? Or can we go get some additional funds somehow? When I built our house, we decided we wanted a little fence out in the front yard. It wasn't in the budget, but it became important to us, so we dipped into savings and built our own fence. And, it turned out to be only a couple $100, but it was a couple $100 affects your budget. And a couple $100 wouldn't probably affect your school system budget, but a couple $100,000 would. So planning is so important that you set all these things in motion at least 2 years in advance. As we have met with your staff already, we're starting to look at what are we going to do down the road? What are we going to need to do down the road? And then there's been no real decisions made, but we're looking at your facility plan to see what's there. We're going to come back and take a quick look at your plan, So now is a great time for us to take a break.